Hello and welcome. If you haven't already, I invite you to please click subscribe. There's no obligation, and it allows you to be notified of all new chapters. Additional information about the story, including the author, chapter warnings, and rating, can be found in the description below. All credit goes to the original author. Bleeding Skies by Orphan Account. Chapter 3. The Car. Everyone but Stiles looked out the right windows and caught on to it immediately. Smoke twirls up, starting off of the ground, deep inside a desert valley, right underneath them. A trail of black smoke twirls towards the hot summer sky. In a few hours, the sun will start to sink and paint the skies blood red. That's weird. Scott reacts troubled as he unbuckles his seatbelt and moves forward towards the pilot, taking a closer look from the cockpit's point of view. Didn't you just say this is a deserted area? It's supposed to be. Nobody is crazy enough to drive around these deserted roads, the pilot reacts. There's absolutely nothing here. No villages or towns, no water or food. Only sand, harsh winds, and smaller dunes. I have no idea what that is. Can you take a closer look? Fly over it. Not if you want us to crash. Look, that valley's very small. The area where the smoke comes from, I can't fly over. One wrong move could send us straight into a hill. I'm not taking that chance. Stiles listens intently to the conversation, hoping and praying Scott will tell him not to bother. But it wouldn't be Scott if he wouldn't be troubled and concerned. What do you think that is, then? Could be a car on fire, Derek offers. Or a truck that somehow got stranded here. There's a long stretch of road where I can land, the pilot replies, pointing at the concrete slab right in front of them that twirls through the dunes, laid there a long time ago by people who cared about nature and respected it enough to work around it. There are only 3 or 4 roads like this throughout many, many miles. All trucks know they have to avoid this area. If they break down, it can be hours before help comes, and believe me, you don't want to be here in the dark. But I can land easily and we can have a look. Stiles groans even louder. You're kidding me, right? Can't you just call it in or something and let someone else go check this out? I swear I'm gonna throw up all over your seats if you land now. Trust me, I am not kidding. Stiles is right. We shouldn't land if it's so dangerous out here, Lydia says. It'll be dark in a couple of hours. This is not our concern. Let's just call it in. Slight problem there, the pilot confesses. My meters are totally off. I should have them checked, I know. My boss has been nagging me about it for ages. Then how the hell do you know where to go? Stiles asks angrily. You might have flown us to Australia for all that we know. Relax, son, the pilot replies easily. I know this area by heart. Only calling in would be like searching for a needle in a haystack afterwards, even if I explain it thoroughly to someone. We'll just go see for ourselves and make sure that everything's okay down there. It won't take a minute, I promise. I can touch down and take off without a problem. The road is long enough. We'll be in Palm Springs before you know it. Scott nods. Do it then. He takes a seat up front, buckling up next to the pilot as he begins his descent. Derek, seriously? Stiles nearly begs, staring at the older wolf before him. This guy is freaking me out. Does he really have to play heroics here? Let's just move on and let someone else take care of this. We're supposed to be on a weekend off, remember? It's not like things at home are always so quiet, you know. Derek looks up. And what if it really is someone in trouble, Stiles? Would you abandon them? Come on. This is no man's land. The only thing burning down there is a burning bush, and we all know how big that chance is, Stiles mutters, knowing all too well he's being outnumbered by his companions, who are very much eager to find out what's going on. For the first time ever, Stiles doesn't care about mysteries. He just wants to land in Palm Springs, rent a car, and drive back home as soon as possible. But he's being outnumbered, and he knows deep down that Derek is right. There could be someone in trouble down there. What if they ignore it? What if someone dies because they ignored it? He closes his eyes, trying not to spill his bile all over the plane as the pilot brings the aircraft down efficiently and lands it perfectly on the empty road. The landing itself is rather soft, to Stiles' big surprise. Relieved, he unbuckles, standing up on shaking legs. The radiating desert heat is suffocating. Stiles immediately starts sweating as soon as the pilot opens the door and jumps out. His warm blue t-shirt sticks to his chest. His trousers feel like they've been glued to the plane's chair. He sees the others too seem to be bothered by the heat for a moment. The girls are happy they're lightly dressed. The guys wish they were wearing shorts instead of jeans. The pilot exits his plane determinedly, Derek, Liam, and Malia tagging along with him as they walk at the same pace, heading towards the cause of the smoke. Lydia is the next one to exit, followed by Scott, who also plans to find out what's going on. It's Lydia who waits for a very hesitant Stiles, left behind on the plane for a moment, surprised by his lack of interest to investigate, realizing he really must have been feeling off. She feels guilty for teasing him, making a mental note to talk to the others about it and to give him a break. "Aren't you coming, Stiles?" Yeah, he waves, taking deep breaths as he inhales the too hot, fresh air. The heat doesn't make him feel much better, but at least the brief rest gives him a chance to recover from the plane sickness. Slowly, he starts regaining color on his face, feeling better by the second. He might actually survive the last 15 minutes, he realizes, if he can live through another takeoff and descent. But this definitely will be the very last time he ever hops on a plane. That he swears. "Better?" Lydia asks, grabbing his hand. "Yeah," he grins weakly, realizing he does start to feel better by the second now. The smoke comes from behind a small hill, hiding whatever it is from their view. The group walks to the top of the sandy hill and spots a car with a burning engine underneath its closed hood, standing in a small, steep valley a long way from the main road where their plane is parked. From the tracks on the dirt road where it's standing, it's clear the car has been driven here, only to come to an abrupt stop in the middle of the valley, deliberately taken there by someone who doesn't mean well. Another cold vibe runs down Stiles' back as he overlooks the burning car. "Listen," Stiles says, closing his eyes as he stands beside Lydia on the hill, watching the others already approach the car cautiously. "Do you hear that?" "Hear what?" Lydia asks, surprised. "It's deadly quiet here." "Exactly. Isn't it great?" Stiles inhales the fresh air and looks around, taking in the beautiful scenery surrounding the burning car. This is better, much better actually, well, except for that burning car standing in the middle of the valley that's kind of stinking up the place. Lydia smiles understandingly, content Stiles' humor was not lost along with the contents of his stomach, which he very discreetly emptied in that brown paper bag Derek shoved in his hands before exiting the plane. "I get your point. Let's go." She stretches out her hand and he grabs it automatically, as they always wind up doing somehow. Together they hurry off the hill, following the others who stop halfway down the hill, stopping at a short distance facing the burning car. "Why would there be a vehicle burning in the middle of nowhere?" Scott asks cautiously. "And what happened to its driver?" "Do you think there's still someone inside?" Derek asks, holding his hand above his eyes as he squints against the late afternoon sun. "I can't really see. We have to move closer." I don't know, I can't tell, Scott says, realizing he can't switch his eyes with their pilot there. Scott is the first one to further slide downwards, approaching the vehicle carefully. Liam is right behind him, followed by Derek, the pilot, and Malia. Stiles helps Lydia as they follow the others. Stupid kids playing with an old car, setting it on fire, I'll bet you $10 on that, Stiles mutters under his breath. As they approach the vehicle, Derek is the first one to see two bodies sitting in the front seats of the car, both burned to a crisp as the flames lick through the vehicle, leaving a trail of smoke and burn marks. It's obvious the car has been burning for some time, still shedding black smoke and flames from its engine. Okay, Stiles says out loud. Guess I lost that bet. Curiously, he moves forward towards the car, his investigative mind in full force again. Lydia stops in her tracks, grabbing Stiles' sleeve. Be careful, she warns quietly, her mind trying to figure out what her ability is trying to say to her. She feels darkness hanging over the area, but she can't figure out what it means just yet. A homicide? Derek asks out loud. Car set on fire in the middle of the desert with two bodies in them. Looks like a hit or something. They don't exactly look like kids to me. Could be someone trying to get rid of the evidence and hoping no one would ever find them. Who would go this far, right? Or a suicide pact, Malia offers. Perhaps they did this to themselves. Strange suicide, setting yourself on fire, Stiles comments, automatically taking the lead as he moves slowly towards the car to take a closer look at the bodies, directing himself towards the pilot. You have a fire extinguisher on the plane? If there's anything of evidence left, we should try to preserve it for the cops. Yeah, I do. Stiles turns towards him. You better go get them then before all of it goes up in flames. We might at least save some of it, even though it won't be that much. It might be enough to help the investigation. Always the sheriff's son, Scott quips, while the pilot eyes the kid suspiciously, wondering if he's not messing around. But Stiles already starts to walk circles around the car, trying to take in as much information as he can. I'll go, Malia says, turning around and hurrying back up the hill. Liam follows her, both running up the sandy hill, disappearing behind it as they head out to the parked plane. The pilot walks towards Stiles, moving in circles with him while the teenager memorizes the license plate and details. He's queasy at the sight of the burnt corpses, but his mind automatically starts treating them as if they're props from a movie. What are you doing? Gathering evidence. But you're not touching the car. No, Stiles smiles, tapping his head. I'm storing information. My dad's the sheriff at Beacon County. I picked up a few trades here or there. I see. The pilot's stomach protests at the sight of the burned victims. What do you think this is, then? Definitely a murder, Stiles says, grabbing his phone to make photos, while Scott and Derek talk as Lydia stands quietly at a distance, watching him. They didn't stand a chance, you see that? Their hands are tied together to prevent them from escaping the vehicle. Whoever did this definitely didn't want them out, and from the looks of it they were burned alive too. How can you tell? The pilot asks, biting back the bile down his stomach. Scott is fascinated as he watches Stiles take photos, seemingly unmoved by the burn victims. It's almost as if he's able to see through them, searching only for relevant evidence. Didn't that kid puke at the sight of blood? Derek inquires dryly. Uh-huh. My stomach is turning of that god-awful smell, and he's walking around as if it's nothing. He doesn't have a werewolf scent, and he's in the zone, Scott remarks with a smile in his voice, listening to Stiles further explain to the pilot. Zone? He always gets like that when he's investigating. He has this whole board at home with cases he sneaks out of his dad's office and looks through them when he's bored or too hyped up to sleep. Derek pulls an eyebrow. So why doesn't he simply take a sleeping pill then? Scott snorts. Do you even know Stiles, Derek? He lives on 4 hours per night, give or take. The older wolf pulls another eyebrow, but says nothing more as he starts listening to Stiles' explanation. Look at the way their bodies are seated in the car. Heads turned backwards as they strain their necks. They died in agony, mouths open and bodies writhing against the fire. It was painful, and if you look closely, you can see that the car doors were jammed as well. You see those rocks? They were put there deliberately. Even if they had been able to free themselves, they would never have gotten out. On their own account, even if they were able to get rid of the ropes. Stiles sinks down on his knees. I'm pretty sure there were 2 of them. They're 2 different sets of shoe prints. Stiles scans the scene as if he's the sheriff himself, shrugging when he sees Derek gaze at him. I read case files. I steal from my dad's office when I'm bored, sorry. Yeah, Scott just told me, Derek snorts, as he eyes Scott, who raises his eyes to the skies. Stiles looks around, ignoring the wolves, as he continues his investigation. Look, there are more tracks down here. There were 2 cars here, and the second one left in a hurry by the looks of it. See the skid marks? It obviously didn't have any problems driving up the hill, so it must have been a Jeep or SUV. Then he snorts. Of course it's a Jeep. What else? Scott, can you take some pictures of that? Scott takes out his phone to take a bunch of pictures of the traces, knowing that the desert is merciless and will get rid of the traces soon. Sand drifts up all around them as the late afternoon sun slowly becomes an evening one, still brooding hot over the valley. Derek kneels down and touches the ground. I'm picking up a scent, he tells Scott quietly, making sure the pilot doesn't hear. There are 4 different ones, 2 filled with fear and sweat, so I'm guessing they're from our crispy critters there. And the other 2 are filled with rage and anger and stop right at these skid marks. The pilot feels goosebumps crawl up all over his clammy skin as Stiles finishes his remarks. That's terrible. Disgusting, really. Who would ever want to burn people alive no matter what they did? I don't know. And yes, it is, Stiles says slowly. People can be very cruel. You'd be surprised at what horrors people are capable of. The pilot eyes him, surprised, but doesn't say anything while they return to the rest of the group, standing on the other side of the car. Can you call your dad? Scott asks. Can he send some officials here? I already tried, but there's no reach here, Stiles shrugs. Phones are useless out here. We'd better get back to the plane and use the radio. The pilot nods. Night will fall soon, and if we don't hurry, nobody might make it here until morning, he explains. Evenings fall very quickly in these parts, and I'd hate to be stuck out here tonight. To be honest, we might as well head back to the plane and continue the last part of our flight. There's nothing much we can do right now. If I can get a hold of my dad from the radio, he'll send people over in the morning, Stiles shrugs. There's nothing anyone can do for these 2 anyhow. The pilot nods. I'll be happy to move on. Who would do such a vicious thing? That's for others to find out, Derek says, eyeing Stiles, who is still taking a few pictures, sweating from the hot sun that bakes them all. I'm pretty sure Stiles' photos will help. Scott takes a few steps backwards while he takes away his phone. They literally are in no man's land, with no sound around them but the continuous sound of flames exuding from the car's hood. Liam and Malia appear on top of the hill, carrying 2 fire extinguishers with them. Stiles kneels down and takes one last photo of the second car track when the pilot sniffs his armpits and decides it's time to go. Suddenly, Derek looks up, sniffing the air. What is it? Scott asks, troubled. Something's off, the oldest wolf mutters. The smell is poignant. Something's changed. We have to get out of here now. He steps forward, heading for Stiles at the exact same time Scott does too, both eager to alert Stiles and the pilot. The next moment, Lydia shrieks, shattering the silence with her hoarse, strong voice. Finally, her brain puts together the dots, realizing what it is that's about to happen. "Stiles, get back!" she screams. Startled by her call, Stiles rises up and looks at her, realizing her warning is real. He sees Derek and Scott head towards him as he makes his way towards them. He hears Malia cry out his name, dropping the fire extinguisher. He sees Liam do the same, running down the hill. Stiles turns towards the pilot, grabbing him by the arm, grabbing his attention. "We have to go now," he urges the surprised man. Then he runs to Lydia, who stands the nearest to him, and pulls her with him. As Stiles looks around, he sees the car explode. He's thrown backwards as part of the metal flies straight into him. He falls hard to the ground, landing next to Lydia, instinctively protecting her with his body when the shattering blast crashes their world. The next thing they know, the car explodes, throwing the entire group on the desert ground, turning the world pitch black for all of them.